Thank you all for staying on with us for the third part of today's event, the exhibition walkthrough. Masha and I would like to thank, first of all, the organizers and supporters of this exhibition. The USC folks, Kay Heitzman and Giovanna Carrera and Larry Gross and John Bolt and Richard Meyer and Alex Boykelheide, who designed the fabulous brochure, which I hope you all had a chance to pick up and look at.
And of course, we would like to thank Professor Monroe Price and his wonderful wife, also an art historian, Dr. Aimée Brown Price, for their amazing intellectual generosity and for sort of pushing this project along and being such an inspiration to both of us. So,
thank you. Thank you. And now let us comment a little bit about the unconventional space for this exhibition. Unconventional in the sense that it is not the typical white cube type of a gallery where things hang in a linear fashion. Rather, this is a very non-linear, dynamic kind of exhibition which begins here, loops around the corner, then continues into the other room. On one hand, this space simulates, to an extent, the kind of space where these posters would have been viewed back in the day. It allows for a more personal, sort of face-to-face encounter with the posters. It allows us to examine their material characteristics. On the other hand, this space highlights the many topical crossovers that these exhibitions represent. We have divided the exhibition tentatively into 4 categories, and you can see the different panels. However, each category gets a panel. However, these categories overlap to a great extent. For just one example, this poster here, it's called A Poster Story About a Slothful Bureaucrat, belongs to several categories. On one hand, it falls into the category of moral codes and behavior, but it's also part of the productivity category. So in other words, don't think of the posters as solely belonging to one category. Think of we've opened them up to multiple.
And so, just quickly marking the sort of the curatorial aspect of this exhibit, the challenging aspect of it, because the posters are so text saturated, we were very much, and we were very lucky that one of the really wonderful professors, Professor Kevin Platt, was able to translate these and really convey the kind of the folkloric, rough, colloquial nature of the language, which is an important aspect of these posters. Yeah, so.
All right, well, what we want to do next is point out some of the formal or visual characteristics that these posters share. And first of those is color. And I'm sure you're all struck by these bold, intense, pure colors. And heretofore, posters had displayed very complex, highly modulated colors that had been mixed in order to create lifelike, realistic representations.
Almost photographic, right?
Almost photographic, indeed. Very romanticized, for sure, but with very complex colors. Here, we have pure, bold colors that harken back to the avant-garde tradition of Russian art of the 1920s and 30s, when color was seen as a medium in and of itself.
Also, another aspect, again, we mentioned that during the talk, the complexity of the narrative and their so-called multiplanarity. Artists do actually acknowledge that the narrative is becoming more complex. It's subdivided into various vignettes. So this kind of vignetting allows for a very or potentially allows for to a willing reader for an intellectual integration of word and image. It's not just an iconic image that you just read instantaneously, but rather you have to work with word and image and connect the two.
Another visual characteristic is the Soviet body that's falling apart, that comes undone. It's a body comically rendered, at times grotesque. In other words, these posters feature a body that's fallible, that's flawed, a body that's no longer idealized and ironed out and healthy and energetic and just full of ideological rigor.
Another key aspect is the less threatening discourse. So it's less accusatory. There's humor. So we should keep that in mind. That does mark a certain period change.
And also something we brought up earlier is this introduction of ambiguity. Because these posters take time to read through, you can reflect, you can engage with them in almost a bodily fashion by laughing out loud, for example. So there is this element of multiple interpretation that is introduced here, which is new. There is a thematic shift in the iconography of the posters.
And sort of picking up on this thematic shift is the kind of shift away from sanitized spaces, idealized spaces of the Stalinist iconography toward more kind of dirty spaces of which could be looked at as, if you look at the new Soviet body, it is dirty, it's flawed, and it's unrefined. It breaks out of its virile shell. So it's all part of the same kind of discourse.
Okay, I'd like to encourage you to come close and look at the posters. They exhibit all sorts of really interesting features. You can look at the tear and wear, but also their color swatches and all kinds of signatures and dates of when the posters went into production or the person that approved them, and so on and so forth. So the first thematic section that we deal with is productivity. And these posters really demonstrate Khrushchev's attempt to rejuvenate an economy, a Soviet economy that had been completely weakened by Stalin's previous focus, inordinate emphasis on the military-industrial complex at the expense of the light industry. So Khrushchev this is his number one priority, to rejuvenate the economy, to create a more consumer-oriented economy that's based on quality control, on technical innovation, on an improved work ethic. And one of the posters in this category is this one, Cowshed, the cover image of the brochure as well. This poster is particularly interesting because it comically approaches the issues of agricultural inefficiency and unreasonable spending. This poster the artist has humorously literalized a quote up here by Khrushchev, who says, "Certain architects have designed cowsheds of such luxury that the only thing missing is a mirror in front of each cow. This is irrational." So we have the cows placed in a very resplendent kind of cowshed with a mirror and candelabra, and their stalls are made out of Karelian birch, which was a very expensive luxury type of wood. And they have been lent a human voice. They really bemoan the sorry state of Soviet agriculture, and in this way they voice the farmers' own concerns. And please, on your time, when you have a chance, read the translations. They really convey the flavor of the original Russian text. So the next, well, if you. They're kind of tucked away here. But the next section has to do with new moral codes and behavior. Again, it overlaps with the notions of productivity. So these posters, at least in this section, they openly condemn social flaws and kind of break away from the legend of the perfect and conflictless society that's been conveyed by Stalin. So we see the alcoholic. No one can really see the posters. Please,
if you want to see the posters, because we're talking about.
Here.
We're kind of talking. Well,
this is the particularly curious one with the alcoholic sprawled on the ground amid his bodily
fluids
and other kinds of fluids.
But what's so interesting about this poster is that it really picks up, and too bad Richard is not here, it really picks up on this pop art aesthetic, and clearly it's very much Americanized, and the American aspect of it is of course portrayed as negative, like the woman engaging in private trade. That reminds us of James Rosenquist's images, or Roy Lichtenstein's images. Yeah. So, and you should pay attention to this really interesting use of pink that sexualizes the woman, and it's a new way to approach propaganda, indeed. So the
okay, so we're gonna. We'll actually go next door.
Yeah.
So this is the third section in the exhibition. It's entitled Popular Oversight, and it really reflects the emergence of a new type of social control, which, unlike the Stalinist top-down centralized type of command, is predicated on self-policing, self-disciplining, social control through mutual intercession, through self-correction. In other words, it is the people themselves that can correct themselves or correct others. So we have a shift from the top-down kind of control to self-policing, a softer touch, in other words, as far as social control is concerned. And the poster that represents this best in the most graphic way is this one here by Khrushchev from 1961. It's simply titled Popular Oversight, and the title comes from this object right here, which takes up the whole top part of the poster, and is comprised of two words. The one on top reads popular, of the people, and the one underneath that forms the lower lid of the I says control or oversight. So here we have a vigilant linguistic object, which, just based on its visual characteristic, may double as a mouth. So we have this disembodied I mouth, from which sharp arrows emanate and illuminate delinquent behavior on the site. And here we have some sort of a spring harvesting season and people engaging in delinquent behavior. So the Soviet body here figures twice. On one hand, it is the agent of control and correction. On the other hand, it is the perpetrator of those crimes that have to be corrected.
So, and the next, well, the description, so the next section of the exhibition is housing and lifestyle. And I, just quickly to introduce this section is, after Stalin's, reign of terror, really, after the prisoners came back, the realization settled in what he has accomplished. But one of the crises that came out of it is the acute housing crisis. So you can see these two posters on the left or on the right, and in fact this one as well, addressing these issues. So between 1956 and 1965. About 108 million people received their own private apartments, which was sort of a shocking experience for them. Before they lived in communal apartments, there was no sense of privacy, and that really alleviated their plight. Although those apartments, of course, were of particularly bad quality and were made out of prefabricated structures, but nevertheless, to have a private space was considered a luxury. But one of the reasons why we also included this image when two girls met into this section is because this newly regained sense of privacy was also kind of represented a threat to the state. So the state wanted to control private behavior and continued to want to control it as before. And this poster addresses a sort of an instruction on how to bring children up, really. So it's a very private affair and an intimate affair, but it's certainly articulated in this really complex poster on many levels. So it's divided into parts. So it's polarized. You see the gray part, which you can immediately read as negative, and you see the pink part as you that you must read as positive. At least that's how it is conveyed superficially. So you see a bad girl who is, as John Volt noticed, she's attractive. She's wearing these new consumer goods. I mean, she's wearing the pink sweater. She's wearing stockings. She's wearing capri pants. She's kind of very fashionable, but she's lazy. She's conveyed as lazy because her parents, the father does her homework for her, the mother does the ironing, and the mother is, the grandmother is doing her piano lessons. Whereas the good girl, who is uniformed, who is disciplined, who is not facing us, she's a good girl. She's doing everything she needs to do. But what's so interesting is certain social markers that you can read here, and if you have to look at it very closely to really, I think, to really read into it. And it took us a while to kind of decode what's going on here. So on the one hand, you have this intellectual family that's considered bad here, and so intellectualism is actually somehow, through this girl, is equated with indolence, with not producing things, with not being productive. And here you see kind of these proletariat types, right? A young woman in a kerchief, the grandmother that is probably belongs more to the rural setting rather than the urban setting, and then the young father. Also the age, if you notice, this father is much older than this father. So there's kind of this almost, well, there's an equation of intellectualism, indolism, and bourgeois kind of environment, because what you have is a grand piano in the house, which is a luxury. But I think what's also so interesting about this work is that most likely this is a Jewish family. So one of the reasons why we say that is because, and it was actually noticed by one of our professors originally, by Kevin Platt, is because she's a redhead with little freckles, and usually that was being a redhead was not necessarily, but usually was a marker of being Jewish. So here you have, and again I'll reiterate, an equation of intellectualism, indolism, bourgeois kind of environment, and Jewishness being kind of wrapped up into the same negative package. And yet the girl is facing us, and she's much more interesting than the other one. So clearly the artist is not, it's not just black and white here. So, and I think this is really, we're concluding our.
Well, perhaps maybe we can say a little bit about the subversive aspect of this poster, because the girl on the left is the one who's facing us, the one who's attractive. It's who do you want to be is the question, really. Do you want to be on the boring side or on the more fun side? So we just find it slightly veering away from the original message, perhaps. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.